My name is Steve. Wayne and Diane Lautenbach are the owners here, and many of you know them, right? Or know of them. I am the son-in-law, okay? So I guess what we've been asked to talk about here is a little bit of the history of the family, the building, and the business. Is that correct? Okay. So, Bill, how long has your family been in the county?
His grandfather, 100 years.
Yeah, and Wayne would be the same thing. I think if you and Wayne sat down, Wayne's grandfather, was it Augustus, before my time. Wayne's dad was Frank, and then his dad was the original Lautenbach settler here that's led to everything else. Can you hear me?
Barely.
Okay, so what he's telling me is that this mic is only for his camera, not for the room. I will speak up for you. So the family, the Lautenbach family, has been here 6 generations. Did I get that right? Augustus, Frank, Wayne, Kim, Eli, 5 generations for sure. Diane is a Brower following the patriarchal path. She's a Brower, which is a name that goes back to pre-1900 as well. So well ingrained into the county and its culture. Kim and I joke that she had to go south of the bridge for fresh jeans for the gene pool if she wanted to stay here. So, because I graduated from Luxembourg Casco. I grew up on a little dairy farm down by Dykesville. So, the Lautenbachs, Wayne and Diane, I'm going to just start with them. Dairy farmers. Wayne's dad died when Wayne was like 12. I could have that quite a little bit off. But he lived on the farm with Les, his younger brother, and they kept the farm going with their mom. When their mom remarried, Wayne and Diane got married, and then piece by piece by piece, Wayne and Diane bought out the farm from their mom, and then they expanded the farm, and they had their 3 kids, and they raised their farm. So, like the Krolls that have been here forever, right? What's your maiden name?
Londo.
Londo. And the Londos that have been here forever, there we go. So you've got to go back and ask about how many cousins in between here, but no. Just kidding, just kidding.
At least 3 or 4.
There you go. There we go. They're dairy farmers. So along with milking cows twice a day and putting in crops and selling some firewood and doing some logging, in 1983 they came up with this brilliant idea to go to the town and ask them about putting in a log home and get, lotting off. So they lotted off 1.5 acres, put in a well and septic and a foundation, and over the course of the winter they built their first log home. Now they're farmers. Farmers can do a little welding, do a little carpentry, do a little bit of everything, right? And then the following winter, they built a second one as a winter project. But those were kit log homes. Then comes along a man that I never met. They tell me he was from Montana. Can't even confirm that. But he worked with them on the third house. And he said, hey guys, I can teach you how to do Scandinavian scribe instead of working with with logs that are from a kit. So the logs you see in here are put together. They're scribed so the top log fits the log below it. All right, so you put a block here, you put the next log down, you run a scribe on the inside and the outside, you make a cut with a chainsaw, touch it up with the belt sander, with a rotary sander. But anyhow, this log fits down onto this one. There's no chinking between these logs. Okay, they're fitted together. That's the craftsmanship. Well, where'd the logs come from? They are all Door County harvested pine trees they bought from private property owners. They might have approached Bill and Carol and said, hey, we see you got a half a dozen white pine that are towering over your deciduous trees, and if they could get a contract, they would harvest the trees, and had a good reputation for minimal damage to other trees, unlike many loggers who have a bad reputation for collateral damage, okay, back in the day. So that process, that guy helped them build a third house. Y'all know where Birch Lane is, and they built several houses on Birch Lane, okay, and a few other places in the county. Frank tells me that they built as a family. That's Wayne Sr., Frank, the oldest son, and then Wayne Jr., who's a year and a half younger, 2 years younger. They built 17 log homes as a family team. In addition to, or maybe that includes the house on Plum Bottom Road that the family still owns in the family trust, and they use it as an Airbnb. Okay, it's 3,600 square feet. When that one was finished, they started working on this one. Okay, this one's 10,000 square feet. built the same way, just a different design. The design was not computer-assisted drafting, et cetera, et cetera. It was in Frank's head. And every once in a while, he'd scratch something on paper. When I came home from the Army, we were out in the barn milking cows, and Frank is explaining to me what he's envisioning for the roof and ceiling structure in the front entrance. So I'm going to challenge every one of you when you're walking out to look up and look. How do you envision that in your head? And then how do you put it on paper to explain it to Cole? Is that right? Herbert? I can't. It is. Giz. Oh, well. How do you explain it to Carol? I wasn't expecting something. Okay. But he's trying to explain it to me. And this is my recollection. He gets up from underneath that cow and he walks over and tears a little wax paper off of a mineral bag, flips it onto the hip of a cow, pulls out a pencil and tries to draw me a picture. And I said, I still don't quite get it, but we trust you, you know. So when I came into the picture, all the logs had been harvested. You know, you put a couple logs down like this, and then you put all the rest of the logs this way and on a crib, and then you can peel them and turn them as you've seen in the video. But they all started out like this, as a standing tree, okay? So then when they would find a few hours between cows and farming, field work, et cetera, they would peel the logs, and then they would rotate the logs and let them sun dry, all right? So here, that's Frank, the oldest, and Grandpa. We call him Grandpa to not get confused with me, because my wife says it all the time, Dad, and I never know if she's referring to me or her dad. So Wayne is Grandpa. So the logs were brought back to the farm, peeled, and laid in the cribs to dry. When Frank was ready to build the next tier, he walked through and marked the log that he thought was appropriate for the next tier. And you have to build the shell, meaning the wall structure, in tiers, because you can't get too high here, and then there's no fitting them back together over here. You got to build in tiers. So he would identify which logs, and then they would get moved to the skid steer, a crane, or a payloader into place. He'd scribe them, and each log was meticulously fit to the next log. So there's no place in this building that I am aware of in 20 years where air is coming through. Maybe a little draft under a door or something, but and the logs will shift and settle. So the first year that the logs were sitting here, once the roof was on it, we did have a little settling. And if Giz walks over here, I'm going to pick on you because now I know your name, and walked over by the fire pole station alarm, you'd be able to see in the stain where there's been some movement of the logs. That all occurred in the first year, okay? Above every door and window on the outside of the building, that fascia board where the exit sign is attached to the log above it. The framework for the door has a slot cut into the logs over here, and it's an independent device so that if the logs would ever move, there's a slot in here I can stick my finger, see? And that is stuffed with insulation so no air can blow through, but if it would ever shift, it doesn't bind on the door. So if I unlock the door, all right? So the only door that I know that we've got a little bit of an issue is a closet door in there, and the men's bathroom door, there's a little bit of settling going on, and one of us needs to do a little adjusting to the door. But that's all part of the design. So when I came into the picture, Frank had the log walls fairly well done a few to go, and he was working on the trusses. Wayne, the younger brother, was right there with his older brother working with him, okay? Frank wanted to be a farmer, but he needed to get this building done. So there were days where Wayne, who necessarily didn't want to be on the farm, he wanted to stay in the logging. There was a lot of days, if you stopped in here during construction, you'd see one person here. It was Wayne Jr., okay? For example, all of the tongue and groove that you see when you build this roof system, the purlins are in, the trusses are in, there's a on-plane surface that some of the video will show, and then you start putting in the ceiling before you build the roof. You put in the ceiling, which is all the tongue and groove. And I'm going to say Wayne did 90% of that by himself, okay, for this whole building. But it was his way to not have to go in the barn and milk cows and feed cows and drive tractors and pick stones, okay, because he didn't want to do that. And it worked out. So I was just labor when I was available. I had a job, and I I had a couple of rental properties, and when I had time, I helped out. I helped with clearing the lot and, shoveling and manual labor. But when we set the trusses, Wayne was on one wall, I was on one wall. Frank ran the crane, and Grandpa ran the guide rope, to get it all set. But pretty much everything was done by Wayne Jr., and Frank. When I say everything, okay, the HVAC was done by a commercial unit. We built the entire roof system. The video will show the roof system and how it's constructed. But after Wayne had all the tongue and groove on, then you put Doug fir on edge and you toenail through the Doug fir, through the ceiling material and into the purlins, okay? And then you can run your wires, your insulation, you can build your support boards where you're gonna hang your lights, et cetera, et cetera. And then we decked it with, after the insulation was on, we decked it with OSB and tar paper. Then we hired a company, so this is the second one I'm mentioning, from Manitowoc County to come put the standing raised rib metal roof on the building. All right, so the HVAC was put in after that, but we hired the HVAC, we did that. The stones for the fireplace came from the fields on the farm. But we did hire a mason, and I think he was from the Brussels, Forestville area, and he did the masonry work on the fireplace. Okay. The bar was built by a company in Shodo, northern Manitowoc County. All right, and they make bars and hotel front entrances and stuff. That's what they do, and they go all over the nation doing that. So Shodo built the bar, and then we had different plumbers and electricians and the well drillers, and the septic was put in and all that sort of stuff. So those jobs were all hired out. But the construction of the building, even the pouring of the concrete, the heat for this building is in the concrete. So we burn firewood outside in an outdoor wood burner. It circulates the hot water into the basement of the kitchen to a heat exchanger, and then there's, I think, 7 different thermostats in the building. So you have a valve that runs all of the hot water it needs to the kitchen and bathrooms, just to the bar, okay? And in the summer, we can turn a valve, and it still runs to those things, but it doesn't go through the floor anymore. When that's opened up in the winter part, where we're heating the building, then it runs through the floors, and the solenoid behind each one of those valves is controlled by the thermostats that are on the wall in each of the different rooms, okay? So when you're building this, you have to know where you're putting all that stuff, because you got to put it in as the logs are going up. Unlike a stick-built home that you can frame it, drill the holes, put in your plumbing, put in your wiring, you got to know where it's going as you're going in, okay? Because you're not tucking it in. So, all right, we kept farming. My wife Kim worked at another resort in the area, and she was a catering manager, wedding coordinator, that sort of thing. And she resigned 6 months or so before we opened. Maybe it was a year, I don't remember. But she resigned, and we had our daughter Kaylee, and she started working with her dad to put together the business plan, put in the final arrangement of how we're going to organize the restaurant, kitchen equipment based on the suggestions that I made and that Jonathan Cross made, our first chef. So we laid out the kitchen and put that in, and Kim hired the original staff that we have. Carter Stye, did anyone, you probably are all a little bit.
I know him.
You knew Carter. Okay, this is Carter's Corner.
What is
This is Carter's Corner.
Oh, really?
Yep, after Carter died, those fish came out of his living room. His mom, yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yep,
I just had dinner with his mom last week.
Did you? Isn't she? Yeah, she's had a rough go of it. Her husband just died right after he was in a car accident and some health issues. Her brother died. Her son committed suicide, and then Carter died of liver complications. Yeah. She had a rough couple of years.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I was in her house. I was with her in the house. I was in Carter's house. Carter called me the day he died, and he said, "Hey, he made 2 phone calls that day. One was to 911 and one was to me." He said, and I probably shouldn't get into this because it's not historical, but knew Carter's mom. I knew he'd sent me a text. I knew he was having a rough weekend, and I was in here fixing something, and I went to town. I said to Aunt Jeanette, y'all know who Aunt Jeanette is? Jeanette Lautenbach? Yeah. Leslie's wife? Okay, she's at the bar right there. I said, Aunt Jeanette, I'll be back. But after the dental appointment, I'm going to go check on Carter, then I'll be back. And while I was in the dental chair, my phone rang, and it was Carter. And he said, hey, I called 911 this morning after I was coughing up blood. And apparently I passed out on my kitchen floor. They've revived me in Sturgeon Bay. They're putting me on a med flight to Frederick. I need you to do a couple things for me. Take care of my dog. Let my mom know what's going on. Go to my house and clean up the blood so my mom doesn't see it. And if this is it, I've appreciated your friendship. Appreciate that you're going to take care of my dog. And we did adopt her dog. Her dog is outside. If you saw me clearing plates, I slid a couple pieces of chicken and pork onto another plate. That's for Carter's dog. Okay, so we've had Carter's dog for 4 years. So after he passed away that day, we got the call from his mom that he was pronounced dead at Frederick. 2 days later, we were at the house. And I know this isn't historical society stuff, but I was at the house with his mom and his brother, and his mom said, those belong in here. So here they are. So picture of me and Carter fishing together, and there's a picture on the bottom of my son petting the dog on the phone. Carter used to bring the dog to the Little League games that my son participated in that I coached. He wanted the dog when it was a puppy to be around people, to be friendly. And my son was sitting in Carter's backyard in that lower picture, petting the dog when we got the call that he was pronounced dead at Frederick. So that's Carter's Corner. So. All right, so back to the business. So my wife hired the original staff, which included Carter. And we've had some changes over the years, of course, as any business does. I mean, Bill, you know for sure. I mean, you get those people that are steady for 20 years, and then you get those people that are there for 3 months, and you wonder, how will we ever get along without them, or how did we ever put up with them? So after our first chef left, then we got our second chef. And I liked Rick. His mom and dad were aging, and he's from the southwest Milwaukee area. And he was given a job opportunity to go down there to be closer to his parents and help them with their cancer. So we lost him. And at that point, Wayne said, I've understudied under these two chefs, Jonathan and Rick. I'm taking over the kitchen. So Wayne is 83, for those of you that know him. And he made your cherry crisp and your pork loin and your baked chicken. We probably made your mashed potatoes. I know he made the stuffing. So while the kitchen staff was working on being prepared for walk-ins off the street and reservations in the South Room, Wayne made your meal. He's 83 years old. So and when he walked out here to bring me something, I said, well, come in and say hi. He didn't want to. So I'm all dirty and sweaty. I don't want to come in. So we opened in April of '97. And I know it was April 10th because Eli, who's 18 and serving in the South Room, when my son was born, our son, Kim and I had our boy, on April 7th, she delivered by cesarean. So she stayed in the hospital a little bit. He was a little bit jaundiced. On day 3, they let him come out. And we came straight here. Al Anderson's wife and 2 daughters sat at the end of the bar and for about 3 hours held that little guy while we greeted guests. So he says, he can say he literally grew up in this place. Does he want to take it over? No. What do you do, Bill, when the kids are getting to that age? Do you add on to the barn and buy more cows? Or do the kids say, screw you, Dad, I'm going to find a job and work them 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. So, but yeah, so we opened in April 97, and the proverbial key to the farm was handed off to Frank, okay, so that Wayne could concentrate on working in here, his dad. Wayne Jr. went on his own to continue logging and attempting to build log homes without the rest of the family, okay, and I think he built 3, okay, so he still lives just down the road over here on Plum Bottom. Frank lives over on Sky Road. Everybody's right close here to Bill and Carol, okay? And then Kim and I live in Sturgeon Bay. But we're here since April of 2007 running the business. And the only time, people will say, oh, you're never open. Well, you know, we do close on Mondays and Tuesdays. And we still do buses and private parties on Mondays and Tuesdays. And we're still here doing maintenance and inventories. You're closed, you're still never closed, right? You're still there. But Kim quit her job at the other place, started working here, and she's been here for 18 years. When I hung up the towel on the job I used to have in 2012, I went on my own doing carpentry and landscaping and helping out here as my time permitted. And of the last, well, since COVID, I pretty much have been here if the door's open. So Anyhow, did I kind of hit what we're at with what we were hoping to hear? Talked about the building, the family. We're dairy farmers that went into the restaurant business, still farming. Frank's still cropping about 640 acres. He sold his dairy cows, and he still has some that he's raising for beef and feeding out the silo. Wayne is still logging and selling firewood, but I don't think he's building log homes anymore. And Kim is here. As her parents are aging, she's making sure they get to their doctor's appointments, and so she's what they call a tweener. Who knows what a tweener is? We all know that term, right? Yeah, so she's tween. You got kids that are leaving the nest and parents that are aging. And she, her time is caught between, tweener, caught between those two things. So I have two kids from a first marriage. The one lives in Oklahoma, one lives in Missouri. And Kaylee, our daughter, is a senior at UW-Madison. And Eli graduated a year early, but he graduated with his class in June or May, I guess it was, from Sebastopol. So we'll see what he does next. I told him there's no rush to decide I'm going on 63 and still don't know what I want to do. So, I can understand at 18 you don't know what he wants to do. But I do know what he wants to do. He's got a hot little girlfriend, and he likes spending time with her. And she likes spending time with him, and it happens, right? So I think he would already be in the service if he wasn't dating this gal from Sebastopol. Anything else? I didn't ask. Every bus we do, I ask, what's the theme of your bus? Where are you traveling from? Well, I know you guys are all from the Egg Harbor area, so I didn't do that. But another thing I always do when I give a little talk like this after dinner is ask, where are my veterans? Any veterans in the room? I know Bill is. And you are too. And your name? Steve Smith. Okay, thank you, Bill and Steve. So there's a tribute on the south wall on the southwest side of the bar. I was a medic in the 10th Mountain Division, and my platoon leader was an airborne ranger, first lieutenant, and he made it to the rank of lieutenant colonel, and he was killed in Baghdad. And he was trying to tell me not to get out. I had 10 and a half years of active duty when I left. And he said, well, you're halfway to retirement. And I said, sir, you got to make it to 20 to draw that retirement. And when he was killed in Baghdad, he had 17 years and a wife and 2 kids back home in North Carolina. He was from South Carolina. So his tribute, his military obituary is over there with a flag. So, but I always try and recognize my veterans as a veteran and for what the veterans did. So, any other thoughts, comments, questions for me? Yes, Carol.
Who did all the carvings?
Thank you.
The bear.
I skipped right over that. So Frank and Wayne created the canvas for another artist to come in and do the carvings. That was her question. We hired Jeff and Sheila Probst out of Hurley, Wisconsin. So we're up here, they're way up here. Okay. They go by Hawk Hollow Enterprises, and they are professional wood carvers. So they made, I think there's 12, they made the 12 custom doors that are in the building. And then when they delivered the doors, then they did the carving on the canvas that Wayne and Frank had created. So there's a buffalo on one of the big logs here. The buffalo is carved out of the root ball, the root flare of that tree. And over here, the big log, that's the same log that the muskie is attached to. On that big log, they hollowed it out. We bought a turkey, an eagle, and a raccoon that they had made in their shop back in Hurley. And they hollowed out that one log and they slid the raccoon into it. And then the bears, they carved, once the logs were in place, then they carved the bears. So Jeff went through and did all the chainsaw work, and then Sheila followed behind with a Dremel and touched them up and some sanding. And when they were ready and they blew the air out of it and stuff, blew compressed air at it to clean it up, then they did the staining. So that was done by Hawk Hollow Enterprises. Thank you for asking that. Yes, that was someone we hired.
Because they're beautiful.
They're beautiful. The salmon that's above your table. When Frank built the truss, he purposely left it about 8 feet longer than it needed to be, and then Jeff could use his creativity. Well, because there's salmon on this door, he carved it into a salmon. So the tail fins and the feathers, the dorsal fin, are attached, but the body of that fish is that log. Okay? And likewise, on the other side of the fireplace, the root ball of that tree was carved into a whitetail. When we were working on the foundation, Wayne Jr. walked over here to leave a leak. Who takes a leak? You leave a leak. He walked over here and he found one antler. So he walked around for a few minutes, found the second antler, and we just held on to him. He held on to him, and then when Jeff was doing his carving, he made that into a whitetail buck with the protrusion and the abscission line, and to make it as realistic. Had a foretop, a lady and her sister and two daughters. So I'm going to say 60-60 and 40-40. They were sitting in there, and one of the ladies refused to eat from the salad bar because it was hanging below a piece of taxidermy. And the daughters and the daughter and the niece were saying, no. That's carved out of the log. No, it's taxidermy. It's too real looking to be carved out of the log. Mom, look at and I said to the daughter, look at the crack that's developed in the log, and it comes up the neck all the way to the eye of the deer. It's the log. And then she goes, okay, well, maybe it is the log, but at this point, I'm not going to eat from the salad bar. Take your ball and go back to your seat. If anyone knows what I've just referenced. No? Okay. If you haven't heard about Philly, Karen, well, there you go. You can research it. So, all right. Yes?
Was it originally planned to be a restaurant?
Yes and no. Okay. When they started building this, there were a couple of people that approached them to build a large building, and they had some large logs. And said, these logs it's a shame to cut these up and to build a 2,400 square foot house. And there was a company that was interested up in the Rhinelander Hayward area, and the reason we didn't get a contract with them, they wanted, after we assembled it and got it, we would get it ready here on the farm, and then we would load it on the trucks and haul it up there and re-erect it for them. We said, well, and Frank said, well, we'll do that, but I have cows to milk twice a day. I can't be going to Hayward to put it together. So you hire a logging company up there to reassemble it. And the guy said, no, I want the people that built it to assemble it. Because you built it, and then you take, every wall gets a letter, and every log gets a number, and you disassemble it, and then you reassemble it sequentially, right? So that fell through. And then there was someone up towards the Sister Bay area that had an idea what they wanted. And the kind of the shape of the building that we have here, there's a building like that in Sister Bay. I won't say where it is, which one it is, what business it is. But they were interested in potentially this building go to Sister Bay, and they opted to go with milled logs instead of whole logs. So now you're all thinking, which building is it? Which building is it? But I'm not saying which building that is. So then it was like, okay, what are we going to do with it now? The next issue was location. And I will agree, and I'll say it publicly, I will agree with Wayne Jr. But he got outvoted by his dad and his older brother. Where the Cheese Factory restaurant is across from Wood Orchards, when the Orchards golf course was going in, they put that little chunk of land up for sale. And Wayne Jr. said, that's where we need to build it. It's closer to the hotels. Okay? It's almost, maybe not quite in walking distance to other features in the area. And he wanted to buy that and build this there, whereas Wayne Sr. and Frank said, well, we own this land, why don't we build it on our own land? Okay? And the old adage of location, location, location probably was a smarter business move. This is probably a nicer setting, nicer business. So I will agree with Wayne Jr. on what he was trying to convince the family to do, to build it there. But Wayne Jr. did buy that land. And then he turned around and sold it, and then it became the Cheese Factory restaurant. I don't know what it is now. Is it? It's for sale. Okay. But he bought that land and pulled out the apple or cherry trees that were still remaining on the property, and then stuck a for sale sign on it. But that was a good question. Any other questions? Miles, how did I do?
How old are the larger balls?
How old? I have never counted the rings. I can't even estimate them. Frank has attempted to do that, but I don't have an honest answer. Were they 75 years? I'd be guessing. I'd be guessing. And another question we often get is, how many logs are there? How many trees did it take? I don't know. So, but now when you look from this corner to that corner, you might think, oh, count, there's 10, 20, 30 logs. No, those were whole logs. When that whole wall was put in, after the wall was assembled, then the windows were cut out. Same thing here. This is called a proud gable. You're at a 45-degree angle, not a 90-degree angle. Okay, so or 60-degree angles, whatever Frank used at the time for the section he was in, and so this section of wall logs was all solid logs, and then the window was cut out, or the opening was cut out for the windows. So
how long were the logs seasoned for the building?
Anywhere from 3 months to 3 years, because once they sat on the cribs, Frank would walk through and then use his artistic eye to identify what log he thought would be the best fit for the next tier. And even though this log might not have been as aged, it was the right log for it, and that's the one he would tag, and then either Frank or Wayne would move the log. So, but when you look at the logs, well, if I could pull my sleeve up, let's just assume my forearm here. This is the root ball end, and this is the top of the tree, right? When you cut the tree down, when you put that first log down, it goes this way. The next log goes in this way, and then this way, and then this way. So as you're building, you're kind of coming up at the same height. And at the top log that it's cut to have the proper flat surface to meet the roof line, okay? But, so you'll see it's a big log, a smaller log, a bigger log, a smaller log, a bigger log, a smaller log, all the way up. And that's throughout the whole building. So people will ask about the sunroom in there. Was that an addition? No, that was part of the original construction. Okay, we have, I think, 10 tables outside on a patio, and then the waterfall attraction that's out there. Those were all rocks that Kim's dad took the semi, a lowboy trailer, and a skid steer, went into the woods on the other side of G, and came back with loads of rock, big rock, out of the woods. He knew where they were. And we built that. Now that was Waterscapes design. Waterscapes is out of the Maplewood area, and they do landscaping, and so they came in with the idea of what we do. So whether there's a pit in the ground, it has 3 sump pumps in it, and then there's 3 little rivers that are lined with rubber roofing, basically, and then stones on top of it so you don't see the rubber roofing, and then it pumps it up onto the elevated rocks, and it just trickles back down, goes through a leaf filter, and then back into the pit, and it's a continuous operation, provided someone makes sure that the leaves are getting pulled away from the filter. Once in a while, no one will go out there this time of year, and it starts to spill over, and the pit's running low because the water's not getting in fast enough because of the leaves on the filter. And it reminds me, I bet it hasn't happened yet today.
How long from start to finish?
10 years.
So from getting the log?
When they finished the house on Plum Bottom Road, started working on this. Now, in 10 years, and Bill can attest, was it 98, August of 98 for that tornado?
98.
August of 98. From that point, for about a year and a half, nothing happened on this building. Because when you have all this logging equipment and your neighbor's land is devastated, Wayne and Frank and Wayne Jr. and me to a lesser extent, because I had a job, when they were done milking cows, they were helping neighbors clean up after the tornado because somebody's silo roof ended up in someone else's woods or cornfield or whatever, you know what I'm saying? And people say, oh yeah, you built this out of the trees that you salvaged after the tornado. No, there's not one tornado tree in here. First of all, these are all pine, and second of all, those were twisted, The second thing is they were approached by someone to build a custom log home off property, and they agreed to do it. So that was another year and a half. So of the 10 years, there was 2 year-and-a-half segments, nothing was touched. And then there was a lot of time that, like I said, it was just Wayne Jr. here, like when he was building the roof system, he was putting in the tongue and groove. Now, once he got this section in, then we came in and put the Doug fir and enclosed the section and stuff. But something else that we hired, Carol, you asked about the carvings, the chandeliers. My understanding is Wayne and Diane went to a Brown County Home Builders Association meeting, and they were talking to a guy about, he was retiring from the sheriff's department, and he was buying a metallurgy shop and expanding it, and he was adding 3D laser cutters and powder coating capabilities. And they told him what we're building here, and they showed him pictures of the bar stools. And on the bar stools, the backs are cut out with bear and elk and deer and moose. And he made a prototype. And then he brought it up here, and Wayne and Diane and the two boys looked at it. They tweaked it a little bit, said, okay, we'll take 32 of them, or however many there are. I say 32, but one of these days I should walk through and count them. So those were all custom made for us by a businessman that was just buying up a business in the De Pere area. So he made those and powder coated them, and then we put them together, and the electrician hooked them up. So that was something else that we hired. Yes.
Was there ever concern about the high water table that this area was in?
Yes.
It would flow over the highway and everything. And
Yep.
Just to hunt down here, and this was a swampy area.
This was low. We have in the 20 years we've been open, and the 10 years of construction, there's been a couple times it's like, ooh, look at the water in the ditch. Yeah. But we haven't had any problem here. We have a basement under the kitchen, and it's never flooded. Now, granted, there's been times where the sump pump's been getting a workout, okay? And it's only in the spring runoff. And over here, there is about a half an acre detention pond, and I don't know if it really will help us or not, but it's dug out, and it's like, it's got to be 10 feet deep, and it's probably a half an acre. And the idea is it's another place for the water to go.
So I remember water being over Highway 42 in the spring.
Yep. And Wayne said the same thing, which is another reason Wayne Jr. didn't want to build here. So when we were building here, when we brought in crushed rock, we brought this area up about, I'm going to say, 2 feet? Maybe it's a little more than that, but we brought it up about 2 feet for that reason. So, yes, we did have one spring where we were concerned about the sump pumps being able to keep up. They never flooded.
The hill up here, and we could see that in the spring.
Yep. It's and it's funny is you've got the Continental Divide on Tilton Gabert's old farm. Between Tilton Gabert's and the Niemeyer farm, it's all changed. You're going back by former owners that are long deceased. But there's a spot in there that if someone would go in with an excavator and dig out a dump truck load of dirt, the water would all go to Simon Creek. But because of that one hill there, it floods Tilton's because it can't go south into Simon Creek because of one spot. And that spot is right at the corner between Wayne, where Frank lives, which Orthaber's got the cabin there. Is that Kevin?
Kevin's got
Yeah. So behind Kevin and Frank and those four properties, right about where that intersects, if someone went in there and took out a couple of one or two truckloads of dirt, all of that marsh floods Tilton's and Spittlemeister's. Yep. That it can't go south into Simon Creek. So it goes northwest, and that's where it comes into here. So there was an effort, apparently, when Niemeyer was still alive, to dig something there. And government people at the time said, nope, it's not the way nature built the sand dunes and the rock depositions after the glacier, and we're not going to let you change it. So sometimes it's easier to ask forgiveness than it is permission. So anyhow, but that's why the water flows this way. And we always keep an eye on it. How fast is Tilton Gabert's place filling up? Bobby Spittlemeister's filling up, and I know they're both passed away. What's that? And then it closes by Lester. And where the culvert is, right by Lester Volkman, and I've said this for a long time, if a guy went to the south side of that culvert and dropped a piece of plywood across the mouth of the culvert, it would reduce it by 95%. It would keep that woods flooded where, who built the house back there? Now they've moved out, and the pottery place. They're in a flood zone. I mean, I don't know how they ever got a permit to build there, but if that culvert wasn't there, there's no way they could have that house there, because that's the culvert that allows it comes onto Wayne Jr.'s water, and then onto the Stratty property, and then across over to here, and then across the road. When it gets close to rising across the road, It's north of our driveway. It comes around the building and it goes that way, which is why that detention pond was dug there. I've never seen that detention pond fill up, but there was one year when I saw it approaching the height of the road, and there's a culvert over here that goes under 42, and the water was going under that culvert. So that's the only time I've seen it. And I got out of the Army in '97. I've only seen it one time. But you've been here for 70 years, and you've seen it a couple of times probably. So, anyhow, anything else?
Thank you.
All right, Miles. Did I hit the mark what you wanted? Okay. Good, good, good.